What's up? It's Tom. Let's talk some baseball. People, let's talk some baseball. It's been a minute. Gonna discuss Carlos Correa as a potential trade candidate in today's Twins 5. This is a video format I really like in the offseason because it allows us to kind of circle back to some stuff that has been coming through the pipeline. Some of this stuff you probably saw as it was being released and reported on, but in the offseason here with not a whole lot going on baseball-wise and a whole heck of a lot going on otherwise, figure it's good to kind of circle back to some of this stuff. So, number one in today's topics is, are the Twins going to trade Carlos Correa? Yes, we are already kind of at the stage where we're asking this question. Coming into this offseason, really expected there to be this sort of anything is possible on the trade market approach, and that sounds like the case right now. You see Joel Sherman from the New York Post asks, basically if the Yankees and Mets should check in with the Twins on a possible Correa trade. I wouldn't have even really thought much of this article. It's early November. Joel's got to write about something, throwing some ideas against the wall. But the thing that kind of pulls me out of that line of thinking is there's an actual quote from Derek Falvey here. He could have very easily just been like, no comment. Or something along those lines. But instead, you see this quote down there, if they came to us, we're open-minded to anything. Falvey started, and then you can see from there. He mentions that, I'm not going to read the whole quote, but he mentions that they have been asked about Correa and Buxton and Lewis all before. But does call out that they hold an extremely high bar to even start that conversation. So, I think it's really easy to overreact to this as a news item and believe that the Twins are realistically shopping at Carlos Correa, and I don't think that's the case. I don't believe that they are actively looking to offload Carlos Correa. As Falvey points out, Carlos does have a full no-trade clause. This is complete speculation, to be clear, but I believe that Carlos Correa would waive his no-trade clause to go to a New York team. So I don't think that is certainly necessarily a barrier here. So for me, my takeaway here is that the Twins are open to having conversations and are actively having conversations on just about everyone. But that doesn't always mean that a trade is going to come to fruition. You never know with these things how some trades just seem to pop out of nowhere and they just happen. But to me, if one of those three guys listed by Falvey here were to be traded, I envision that process looking more like when Luis Arraez was traded. We knew for so long that the Marlins were really hot after Arraez before that trade actually went through. And I kind of think that's how I see the process probably going. So this is certainly something to monitor. This is, our first kind of breadcrumbs, and I'm not really going to react to it until we hear some actual reporting on interest. Like if we get a quote like this from a Yankees or Mets front office official, kind of specifically calling out that they have interest in Correa, that's going to change the conversation. But it's going to be interesting. And the second topic for today relates to this, how I'm reacting to this idea in general. Should the Twins trade Carlos Correa? He does eat up a great deal of their payroll, and we are being led to believe that there is going to be limited payroll. So that's kind of a potential solution, is trade your highest payroll guy and then kind of spread out his salary to some other positions. But as things stand right now, the Twins are in a much better situation than I think we as fans can allow ourselves to embrace. I'd put it that way. It's a weird way of putting it, but after we just saw our favorite team completely collapse, we're down in the dumps pretty bad, finishing fourth in the AL Central, having that horrible September. It's hard to remember that this team is in a pretty good spot for next year and the year after that, actually. They have a very solid foundation, and as evidenced by that, Mike Petriello from MLB ranked all the 30 MLB rosters as they stand based on projected WAR, and the Twins are sixth. Now, keep in mind, the Twins are expected to be not active at all this offseason, well, at least in terms of additions, in terms of payroll spending. They basically have no payroll spending. So there's going to be a lot of teams that will make additions and pass the Twins. But again, we're just talking about the foundation here. This is a very good foundation for the Twins. And most of this foundation is going to be in place next year. So trading Carlos Correa, to me, would be an idea to kick off sort of a pseudo-rebuilding period. And the reason why I call this out immediately after that news item is to say it doesn't make any sense to go that direction at this point, in my opinion. It doesn't make any sense to give up and just say, all right, well, I guess we got passed up in the AL Central and in the AL, and let's just pack it in and rebuild for a few years. We are not there. We are not there. And I know somehow there's always a group of fans who are really, that rebuilding option really speaks to them. I don't know why. I don't know why anybody would want to watch their team be bad for multiple seasons. I suppose it's less painful than to have expectations of your team and have those expectations fall flat. But, yeah, I don't see good reason for the Twins to actively shop Carlos Correa. But I will take Derek Falvey at his word, though, in that, if they're not just going to shut everything down, and if they have a conversation that makes sense to them, much like with Luis Ariz, they're going to potentially make a trade. Wanted to call out, too, that the Twins are 6th. The rest of the AL Central, Kansas City 12th, Cleveland 15th, Detroit 19th, Chicago 29th. The Rockies were actually below the White Sox. Oh, that's got to be a gut punch for that fan base. But so the Twins, in great shape across the league, in great shape in the AL Central. And these are just projections. And again, the rosters are going to change a ton. But can we really expect? It's going to be really interesting. It's going to be interesting because can we really expect Kansas City, Cleveland, and Detroit to close that gap of projected WAR over the offseason? It's hard to say. I don't know that any of those three teams is going to be incredibly active, but I also don't know that they're not going to be. It certainly would be out of the ordinary for Cleveland in particular to suddenly get really aggressive, but they also often kind of outperform these projections anyway, so maybe take that with a grain of salt. Again, the overall point is here the Twins are in good shape, and even Mike Petriello kind of wrote, the first 5 teams, yeah, sure, all make sense. The 6th, wow, Minnesota, really? But again, they have a really, really good core. Most of everybody's coming back from last season. And then again, the season after that, almost everybody's back. I think the only 3 guys in kind of the main roster group who will be gone after this upcoming season are Willie Castro, Chris Paddock, and Christian Vasquez. So this core is in place for the next 2 seasons for the most part. So it just seems like you already have kind of a base here. The tricky thing is if we are looking at the options of being A, go for it, or B, rebuild, which of those options has a more clear path given the payroll limitations? It's really, how could the Twins really go for it right now when they don't have any money to spend? I'm talking about the front office, basically. Even if you're thinking on the trade market and thinking, well, hey, they could trade some prospects and get some MLB talent. That's the way they could kind of go for it. Well, if that MLB talent is established in any way at all, they're going to be making money. So you have to find some way to get out of money. It's a really difficult. That's where I kind of understand maybe where some people are coming from. It is incredibly difficult to envision some kind of a scenario in which the Twins really go for it at this point. But that doesn't necessarily mean they have to swing the other direction and rebuild and trade a Carlos Correa in my mind. But it's tough because I am really fascinated with what is going to happen this offseason. But it's tricky because you can't. You as a Twins fan, we don't get to look at the free agent market and get excited about names and think about potentials because there is no money there. Is the expectation we've been given. So it's really difficult to have any real tangible excitement about who they might add this offseason. But I do think there's going to be trades, and this front office is underrated in their ability to be willing to make big trades. I've mentioned the Luis Ariz trade a couple times, excuse me. Josh Donaldson at one point before they got Correa was their marquee signing of this front office, and they traded him. They traded Chase Petty the winter after they drafted him in the Sonny Gray trade, of course. So those are some big moves, some big moves. So I think this front office is not going to shy away from potentially making some big moves, I wouldn't be shocked if Correa or Buxton or Pablo, one of those three, got traded. I'm not expecting it, but I wouldn't be shocked. Royce Lewis, we saw Falvey throw his name out. I just don't see, when money is the problem, I don't see how you're solving anything by trading a young, affordable, cost-controlled guy. So that one's tough for me, but it'll be interesting. There's certainly a scenario in which I could see the Twins just having a quiet offseason, and maybe there isn't one of those big trades like the ones I alluded to. So there's a lot on the table. The only thing that's really not on the table is they're not going to expand the payroll greatly to sign free agents. But that doesn't mean that there's really nothing fun to follow this offseason. That's how I would put it. Anyway, third one, actual roster moves. There were some actual roster moves since last I made a video. A bunch of guys got removed from the 40-man roster, as we're seeing from Bobby Nightingale there, Scott Blewett, Randy Dobnak, Daniel Duarte, Junior Severino, and Josh Winder. Some of those guys are going to stay in the org, but they are no longer on the 40-man roster. And then Jorge Alcala had his option picked up. So at this point, we also know that Manuel Margot and Kyle Farmer have been told their options are not going to get picked up. So I believe if you look on MLB.com, the 40-man roster shows 37 guys, but I think Farmer and Margot are still on there. So if we remove those guys, it'll be down to 35. So the Twins have 5 open roster spots. You can always make more, I should point out. You can always, if it turns out you want to add guys to the 40-man to protect from the Rule 5 draft, and then you sign some guys, you can always. It's not like it's locked in on those 35 guys, but the Twins have cleared some space. So just wanted to note that. And then some of those names, the last time we spoke, we talked quite a bit about the 40-man roster and how the Twins had a lot to shake out there. And, Junior Severino is the one guy who really wasn't on my radar as someone who might get removed, especially with Alex Kirilloff retiring and Carlos Santana becoming a free agent. You would think Junior Severino, who's primarily played first base last year, would be a good factor in a kind of a backup plan. But, he had a really up and down year. He had an interesting season with the Saints last year. I can understand it, but it's also, he's kind of exactly what they could need in terms of some insurance at that position, and a guy who hits for a lot of power, so a switch hitter. But again, he cleared waivers, so that kind of shows you what the rest of the league thought of him. So that's kind of my big takeaway on that list of guys. No big surprises with the other ones. And then there was some actual roster news. Here's some actual player news. I'm kind of being a little snooty about that, the actual news part, because so much of what's going on right now, as we see with that Joel Sherman article, is kind of speculation. And there are some actual moves going on, some actual trades and some actual signings, but it's kind of few and far between, and there's a lot more analysis and things like that, which is only natural for early November. But just did want to throw out these actual news items. Emmanuel Rodriguez had surgery on his thumb. That kind of bothered him all year. He was kind of on and off the IL due to that thumb. Kind of got activated and then had to go back on the IL multiple times. There was multiple games I saw him playing where you could tell that was just, he was sort of like shaking it or whatever. That just seemed to be bothering him. So great news is that he had surgery and is expected to be ready for spring training. So hopefully that puts that injury behind him and he can move forward because, he's a really exciting player. And I think that's another thing that we could potentially lose sight of, is that there's also some really good prospects coming through the pipeline that are going to help shape the Twins' future as well, in addition to this really solid base, this really solid core that, again, was ranked as number 6 by the projections in MLB at the moment. So I think, it's easy to be down as a Twins fan, but if you would like to feel better about things and turning the page forward, looking back still really hurts. Looking back and seeing September still really hurts, but I don't think there's any reason to be too doom and gloom about 2025. Obviously, they need to get things together. They need to address the issues that resulted in them falling in the AL Central out of the race, but there's some good stuff going on. Final topic, Carlos Santana, he's got a gold glove and he's got an iron will. This guy, as you see here from John Morosi, he is looking to play another 3 or 4 more MLB seasons, according to his agent. Speaking of good vibes, this is a great way to end. So happy for this dude. At 38 years old, wins a gold glove at first base, his first gold glove. As a lot of veteran guys do, kind of a forgotten man, underappreciated. I know Pirates fans really loved him in his time there. And obviously, Twins fans, we really loved him last year. Again, the money situation is tight. They don't have any money to spend right now. But I would be all for a reunion with Carlos Santana. It's only going to, even though he's looking to play through another 3 or 4 seasons, this is kind of like Nelson Cruz where, yeah, but it's only going to take a 1-year deal to get him. And you can kind of keep going year to year and not a huge investment. He made something like $5.25 million last year or something, was worth every penny in terms of baseball money. Also just seems like a good guy to have around, a good clubhouse dude. So, yeah, I would be all about Carlos Santana being the Twins' first baseman again next year. We'll see if that's a possibility in terms of what they can do and what he's interested in. There's certainly other directions they could go, but with Alex Kirilloff's retirement, that really does kind of change the picture there. Of course, there's still Jose Miranda and maybe Edouard Julien ends up there. There's other options beyond those two. But we shall see what happens there. I would love to see him come back. Sometimes it is better to kind of cut ties before it's too late, to sort of get out in front of a guy's aging. But, again, Nelson Cruz, that was such a good – you can't compare two guys, totally different players, totally different situations. But the Twins kept looking pretty smart by going back to Nelson Cruz until, they fell out and then also turned him into – Joe Ryan, essentially. So that worked out incredibly well. And if all it's going to take is a 1-year deal with a pretty modest contract, that's such a potentially, low risk, high reward. A lot of times when you're having that conversation, you're thinking of like a young player in Major League Baseball, and the most of the veteran guys, you're actually having to kind of overpay. But once you get sort of to that aging, toward the end of their career, there does seem to be some good opportunity with these guys to, again, get really low risk, potentially high reward deals. And that's what I really like about the potential of bringing Carlos Santana back, which, I wasn't a huge fan of his signing, so it's kind of funny to say. But hey, man, a really good Gold Glove year, healthy, can change a perspective. I'll say that. If nothing else, I'm very, very willing to change my mind on a player and admit that I was wrong about the Carlos Santana signing, and I would love to see him back. So anyway, that was a bunch of the news that's been going on. Thank you so much for watching this video. Just as a reminder, we'll be doing these Twins 5s, so this is just a great format to keep up with stuff again in the offseason when I'm not recording that often. We'll be writing some stuff at Twins Daily. We've got the prospect list, these kind of year-end prospect lists are going to be coming out for Twins Daily. I'm also working on some more of these things, zines, little publications that I'll be making over the offseason are really fun, just to kind of have as a keepsake and something to look back on, something physical that you can have as a Twins fan. So be on the lookout for those, but I just appreciate you being here, appreciate you hanging out. We'll talk again soon.